Good evening, everyone, and this is Sanjay Sinha from Aurora International School. A very hearty welcome to all of you to Aurora online classes. Dear students, once again I am back and I am back with a new lesson for you, and the name of the lesson is The Black Aeroplane. It is the second part of the story. The first part of the story was we have read the first part of the story that is the first flight, his first flight, sorry. So this story, Black Aeroplane, is the second part of the story, two stories about flying. This is the second part, and this is by Fredrick Forsyth. Fredrick Forsyth, actually he was a jet fighter pilot. He was a professional pilot himself, and actually he was born on 25th August 1938 in Ashford, Kent in England. And he was a journalist and he was a great writer. In this lesson, he talks about his mysterious experience during his flight from Paris to London. So, what happens to him? How he is rescued? What sort of experiences, what sort of things he comes across during his journey from Paris to London. Actually, he was from London and he was flying from Paris to London. He wanted to be with his family and he was feeling homesick, so it was needed for the writer to fly from Paris to London. What happens with him and what kind of experiences does he feel during his journey from Paris to London? Let us see. The moon was coming up in the east behind me and stars were shining in the clear sky above me. There wasn't a cloud in the sky. I was happy to be alone high up above the sleeping countryside. I was flying my old Dakota aeroplane, underline it, over France back to England. I was dreaming of my holiday and looking forward to being with my family. I looked at my watch, 1:30 in the morning. I should call Paris control soon, I thought as I looked down past the nose of the aeroplane. I saw the lights of a big city in front of me. I switched on the radio and said, Paris control, Dakota DS-088, here, can you hear me? I am on my way to England. The voice from the radio answered me immediately, DS-088, I can hear you. You ought to turn 12 degrees west. Now, DS-088, over. I checked the map and the compass, switched over to my second and last fuel tank and turned the Dakota 12 degrees west towards England. I'll be in time for breakfast. I thought, a good big English breakfast. Everything was going well. It was an easy flight. Paris was about 150 kilometers behind me when I saw the clouds, storm clouds. They were huge. They looked like black mountains standing in front of me across the sky. I knew I could not fly up and over them, and I did not have enough fuel to fly around them to the north or south. I ought to go back to Paris, I thought, but I wanted to get home. I wanted that breakfast. I'll take the risk, I thought, underline it, and flew that old Dakota straight into the storm. Inside the clouds, everything was suddenly black. It was impossible to see anything outside the aeroplane. The old aeroplane jumped and twisted in the air, underline it. I looked at the compass. I couldn't believe my eyes. The compass was turning round and round and round. It was dead. It would not work, underline it. The other instruments were suddenly dead too. I tried the radio. Paris control. Paris control, can you hear me? There was no answer. The radio was dead too. I had no radio, no compass, and I could not see where I was. I was lost in the storm. Then, in the black clouds quite near me, I saw another aeroplane. It had no lights on its wings. Underline it. But I could see it flying next to me through the storm. I could see the pilot's face turned towards me. I was very glad to see another person. He lifted one hand and waved. Follow me, he was saying, follow me. He knows that I am lost. I thought he is trying to help me. He turned his aeroplane slowly to the north in front of my Dakota so that it would be easier for me to follow him. I was very happy to go behind the strange aeroplane like an obedient child. After half an hour, the strange black aeroplane was still there in front of me in the clouds. Now there was only enough fuel in the old Dakota's last tank to fly for 5 or 10 minutes more. I was starting to feel frightened again, but then he started to go down and I followed through the storm. Suddenly I came out of the clouds and saw two long straight lines of lights. Underline it. Suddenly I came out of the clouds and saw two long straight lines of lights in front of me. It was a runway, an airport. I was safe. I turned to look for my friend in the black aeroplane, but the sky was empty. There was nothing there. The black aeroplane was gone. I could not see it anywhere. I landed and was not sorry to walk away from the old Dakota near the control tower. I went and asked a woman in the control center where I was and who the other pilot was. I wanted to say thank you. She looked at me very strangely and then laughed. Another aeroplane? Up there in this storm? No other aeroplanes were flying tonight. No other aeroplanes were flying tonight. Underline it. Yours was the only one I could see on the radar. So who helped me to arrive there safely without a compass or a radio and without any more fuel in my tanks? Who was the pilot on the strange black aeroplane flying in the storm without lights? Dear students, as I said that the writer shares his mysterious experience during his flight from Paris to London. Actually, the writer was from London and he was going back home. His home was London and he was flying from Paris to London and he was flying his Dakota aeroplane. Dakota aeroplane, this was the name of his plane, Dakota aeroplane. And this Dakota aeroplane, actually this Dakota aeroplane, and the number was Dakota aeroplane DS088. This was the number, Dakota aeroplane. In fact, what I mean to say, it's very important that the moon, it was a clear and cloudless sky. The weather was pleasant. He started his journey from Paris to London. What happened in the meantime of journey, or what happened to him in the middle of his journey, amid the journey? Actually, there was a clear and cloudless sky and he was very happy. The writer was very happy. He was going home. London was his home. He was flying from Paris to London by Dakota aeroplane and he was himself flying. He was flying his old Dakota aeroplane over France back to England, means London. And actually, since he was feeling homesick, he was dreaming of holiday. He wanted to spend holiday with his family. He was very happy. He was very happy of dreaming that he would be with his family and he would spend quality time with his family. So he was very happy. He was overjoyed. What happened? And when he looked at his watch and found that it was 1:30 in the morning. So actually, he thought that he should contact Paris control room. So what did he do? And he saw that, and he switched on the radio. There is a radio is fitted in the aeroplane. There is compass there. Compass is an instrument to tell you the direction. So actually all the aeroplane was fitted with, it was equipped with all the required instruments like the radio and the compass. So actually contacted he contacted Paris control room, and he said, "Can you hear me? I am on my way to England." Then the radio from Paris control room answered, "Yes, I can hear you, and please turn." He got an instruction. He contacted Paris control room to get an instruction from there, and he got an instruction. Means the writer got an instruction to turn his plane 12 degrees west now. 12 degrees west now. Then he checked his map, he checked his compass, and then he also checked his tank. And when he checked his tank, he checked his compass, he checked his map, and then he turned his plane Dakota towards 12 degrees west towards. So who turned? The writer turned his Dakota aeroplane 12 degrees west. And he was so happy. He thought that he would be reach England, he would be reaching his home, and at home he will spend his quality time, he will be with his family, he will enjoy a lot there with his family, and he thought that he would have his breakfast there with his family. Actually Paris was 150 kilometers away from him. So everything was going on well, and all of a sudden, suddenly what happened, he came across huge patches of clouds, huge mass of clouds, and he says that these masses of clouds were looking like black mountains. So they were the stormy clouds. So as he was flying, and all of a sudden he was surrounded by stormy clouds there. Once he got surrounded by stormy clouds, and he found that the entire sky was covered with the dark clouds. So when he found that the entire sky was covered with the dark clouds, so at first he got a bit hesitant. And he thought that he should, because it was a danger, he should contact the Paris control room and he should stop his journey. But then and there he decided that he won't spend his journey, he won't stop his journey, he will continue flying, he will continue his journey. So for a bit of moment, for a fraction of moment, he thought that he should once again contact Paris control room. But at the same time, just after a moment, he decided that he will take a risk. Means he will continue to fly his aeroplane Dakota despite the black stormy clouds. So he was surrounded by black stormy clouds, and he couldn't stop his flying. He was determined, I would say, he was determined to continue his flying, and he continued to fly. He checked his tank, and when he checked his fuel tank, he found that the aeroplane didn't have sufficient fuel. So it was another danger. At first he came across a dangerous situation because he was surrounded by stormy clouds from all sides. Nothing was visible, it was black, everything was looking black from all around. Now the Dakota aeroplane didn't have the sufficient fuel. So how could an aeroplane fly if it doesn't have sufficient fuel? This was also a problem. He had so actually the aeroplane could fly for some moments, maybe for 10 or 20 minutes. So this was the problem that he encountered. Surrounded by stormy clouds, surrounded by black cloud, then again the insufficient amount of fuel in the tank of the aeroplane. These two were the problems which he was facing there. So insufficient amount of fuel in the aeroplane, one problem. Then he was surrounded by the black clouds, nothing was visible, even though he took a risk. And what was the risk? He took a risk to continue flying his Dakota aeroplane despite being surrounded by dark, stormy clouds. Now, after some time, he found that though he tried to contact, but he found that the radio had stopped working. Even the compass had stopped working. Means both the radio and compass had stopped working, and this was a very dangerous situation for the writer. The writer was himself a professional pilot, and now he was in a problem. He was in a great problem. He did not know what to do, and nothing was visible from out. Nothing was visible, and he was flying his aeroplane. And he was flying his aeroplane. His journey was continued, and he was going on. He was still flying there. Now, the aeroplane did not have sufficient fuel. The aeroplane could fly. He decided, or he thought, he has speculated that since the aeroplane didn't have sufficient fuel in its tank, so it can fly only 10 to 15 minutes. Now, what happened? Then, after some time, he found that another aeroplane came next to him. Another aeroplane, this was the black aeroplane. This black aeroplane come from the dark clouds, and this black aeroplane came from the dark clouds all of a sudden. And this black aeroplane, as I have said, that it came across the dark clouds, and it was flying next to Dakota aeroplane. And the pilot of the black aeroplane was a very good fellow, and he advised him, he told him, means the pilot of the black aeroplane told the writer to follow him, and he kept his, means the pilot of the black aeroplane kept his black aeroplane just in front of his aeroplane, means just in front of Dakota aeroplane, and told him, you just follow me. And the same thing happened. This, I mean to say, the situation was quite dangerous, but the pilot of, the writer who was flying the Dakota aeroplane started following the black aeroplane. And he was a very nice man. He was a very good fellow. He helped him. He came to his rescue when the pilot of the Dakota aeroplane, the writer, was in danger. It was the pilot of black aeroplane who came for his help, who came for his rescue. After some time, he found that, means who found? After some time, he found that, who found? The pilot himself. Which pilot? Which pilot? The pilot of Dakota aeroplane. He found that actually there were suddenly I came out of the clouds and saw two long straight lines of lights in front of me. After some time, the writer found that he had come out of the clouds. Now there were no dark clouds, and they were landing towards down. They were coming down. The plane was coming down, and then at some distance from the ground, the pilot of the Dakota aeroplane saw two long straight lines of lights. So who saw two long straight lines of lights? Who saw it? The pilot of Dakota aeroplane, after some time, saw two straight lines of lights down the aeroplane, and he was very happy. He found that the two long straight lines of lights were actually the runway. Two long straight lines of lights were on the runway. It means that the writer had landed safely on the runway, means he landed safely there. he landed safely on the airport. Now there was no black cloud, there were no black clouds around him. He landed safely. He had come out of his danger. There was no danger ahead of him. So he was very grateful. Means the pilot of Dakota Aeroplane. Who was the pilot of Dakota Aeroplane? The writer himself was a professional jet fighter. He was the pilot. The writer was the pilot of Dakota Aeroplane, and he landed safely. And who had helped him? The pilot of Black Aeroplane had helped him. So he was very much obliged. The writer was very much obliged to the pilot of the Black Aeroplane, because the pilot of the Black Aeroplane helped him when he was in great need of help. So he wanted to give him thanks. He wanted to express his thanks to the pilot of the Black Aeroplane. So he landed there, and then he went to the control room, and a woman, a staff was sitting over there, receptionist was sitting over there, because he had landed safely. And he went there and he asked the woman there. He asked the woman about the other pilot. And who was the other pilot? The other pilot was the pilot of the Black Aeroplane. So he wanted to thank the pilot of, means the writer wanted to give thanks to the pilot of Black Aeroplane for his help. So that is why he went because he had landed safely there. He was on the airport. He went to the control room. He found a woman sitting over there. He asked the woman about this other pilot, about the pilot. Other pilot means about the pilot of the Black Aeroplane. The lady was surprised. What are you talking? The lady saw him. The lady looked at the writer very strangely. What are you talking about? Aeroplanes? No. It's not like that. She said no other aeroplanes were flying tonight. You were talking about which flight? And you were talking about which flight? You were talking about which pilot? Tonight no aeroplanes were flying except yours. Except yours. Yours was the only one she could see on the radar. This is what the woman said. So the woman was very much surprised when the when the writer asked him about the other pilot. She gave a very strange look at him and said, "What are you talking about? No aeroplanes were flying tonight. Yours was the only one flight which I could see on the radar. No other flight was flying there. No other plane was flying there." Now the writer was surprised and shocked, because the writer had gone through such an experience. The writer was helped by the pilot of a Black Aeroplane. He wanted to see the pilot. He wanted to meet the pilot to give him thanks for his help. So the pilot of the Black Aeroplane took the pilot of Dakota Aeroplane, is the writer himself. He took him out of the trouble. So he wanted to express his sincere tribute to the pilot of Black Aeroplane. But even there was no Black Aeroplane there. Even the receptionist also told him that only the writer's plane was seen on the radar. So how is it possible? Now it was quite mysterious. What happened to the who was that pilot, and where has the pilot of Black Aeroplane gone? Because the pilot of the Black Aeroplane was not seen anywhere. Even there was no trace of the Black Aeroplane. So there was neither the trace of, means there was neither the sign of Black Aeroplane nor any sign of the pilot of the Black Aeroplane. So it is quite mysterious as to who was he, and he the writer was very much obliged. He was very much grateful to the pilot of Black Aeroplane, and he wanted to express his sincere thanks to him. But since both of them, neither the Black Aeroplane was there, nor the pilot of the Black Aeroplane was there. There was no sign of both of them. So this is the story. This is quite a mysterious story. This is the story of a phantom plate. Not plate. This is the story of a phantom plane. Something very much similar to the appearance of ghost-like feeling we have when we read out this story. So this is really a very mysterious one, and here it comes. Now the story comes to its end. Dear students, this was the story of the Black Aeroplane. As I said that this was the mysterious experience of the writer during his flight from Paris to London, means from Paris to England, and the writer himself was a professional pilot. He was himself flying his old Dakota plane. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, dear. And I hope that whatever I have taught you today, you have understood it well. And if you have any query, feel free to ask me. That's all for today. Thank you very much.